This is a Geek Leader. Hey guys, welcome to episode 162 of Geek Leader Podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. Now, I've talked a lot about Splashtop, and I've been using them for 7 years personally and 3 years through our company, and I love Splashtop. Right now, video producers, game developers, TV station broadcasters, architects, designers are all using Splashtop to work from home remotely. So if you have those high-end, several thousand, $10,000 computers that are doing your rendering and your animation and your video editing, you leave those at the shop. You can take a laptop home, remote into those, and get 4K streaming, really high frame rates, and be able to work with great performance remotely, securely from your home. And it is a fantastic solution. So that enables you to edit videos, 3D modeling, develop games, and you can do really cool applications. You can use Adobe Acrobat, Premiere, Photoshop, apps like Rivet, Unity, Unreal, AutoCAD. All can be accessed remotely using Splashtop while your machine is back at the office doing the heavy lifting. Great tool, highly recommend it. I've been using Splashtop for a long time, and you can get a discount and a free trial by going to ageekleader.com/Splashtop. All right, Geek Leaders. Today on the show, I've got Mark DeLuzio. He is the founder and CEO of Lean Horizons Consulting. He also started a nonprofit called For the Brave, called Brave, Business Reviews and Advisory to Veterans and Entrepreneurs. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about his new book, Flatline, that's coming out, and just about leadership in general and how to be better leaders, especially for new managers and new team leads in technology or in entrepreneurship or wherever you are today. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
So if you don't mind, tell the audience just a little bit about how your career has gotten to where it is today, how you started Lean Horizon Consulting and your nonprofit.
Well, if you would have asked me, 20, 30 years ago what I'd be doing today, I would never guess this. And one thing I would tell anybody out there in business today in whatever fashion is that just be open to new possibilities. Don't think that you have the track laid down, because that track most likely is going to change. Most people change careers 5 to 7 times in their life, and so that is true of me. Maybe not for everybody, but I started out in the finance world and got into a company called Danaher, and luckily I was at the beginning of the entree into lean manufacturing in the United States. We were the guys that lit the spark of the modern lean movement at a company called Jake Brake, which was one of Danaher's divisions, and I happened to become the CFO of that company. I was sent to Japan to study under the founders of the Toyota production system, the original guys, and I came back and I basically told our CEO of Danaher. He said to me, "What do you want to do with your career?" I said, "Well, I don't want to do finance anymore. I love finance. I wouldn't trade that background for the world, but I want to get into operations." And before I knew it, I was running a plant, and before I knew it, then he came to me and said, "I'd like for you to do what you did for Jake Brake for the rest of the organization," which was Danaher, which is a global company. And that gave way to what is now known as the Danaher Business System. And I'm the principal architect of that. There are other people involved as well. But the Danaher Business System is a world-renowned process to transform an enterprise. And it's still, that's why I have a business 19 years later after I left Danaher with Lean Horizons. People want to emulate what Danaher has done, and they've been one of the most profitable diversified industrials in history. So that's kind of my background really quick, but I came through finance. I've got a marketing and an accounting degree and an MBA in operations management. I'm not going for my PhD, which is crazy because my wife thinks I'm nuts doing it. But anyway, that's where I am today. And I started my consulting company in 2001 to help companies transform. And that's where we are.
All right. So for dummies like me, what's the difference between like Lean and Six Sigma? Because I hear about both. And, when you just gloss over it, you kind of feel like they're the same thing. But are they, or what's different about them?
No, they're not. They're not the same. There's a lot of crossover, John. The way I look at Lean is a more comprehensive philosophy and approach. It starts with principles and goes all the way down to the nitty-gritty tools. Six Sigma is a statistical problem-solving approach. Okay, and it's got its tools too. It's a very valuable tool. I'm trained in it and certified in it, but it is a tool, not a comprehensive philosophy to transform a culture. You cannot transform a culture with a tool, and that's a mistake that some companies made, like GE and Motorola. They try to transform a company with a tool, and that tool is not always appropriate for every situation. So, the old adage is, if the only tool you have in your tool belt is a hammer, all your problems look like nails.
Yep, exactly.
Lean is a much more eclectic system, and the way I look at Six Sigma, Six Sigma fits in the toolbox of Lean alongside all the other tools, and there's plenty of them, right?
Yeah. So that sounds exactly the way, from a software perspective, people talk about Agile and Scrum. Scrum is just a tool for the Agile kind of methodology and framework and way of doing things.
Exactly. And I think from a software perspective, I think Agile is more of to me, when I hear Agile, there's a lot of definitions. You go on the internet.
There is. Oh gosh.
A million definitions. But the way I kind of conceptualize it, John, is that Agile is more of the analogous to a product development program for software,
yes.
Right? How you develop software. And lean thinking applies to that process just as well as it does developing an automobile. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's exactly the same. There's some nuances to it, of course, but software has a very, very similar characteristics in terms of how you develop software and how you look at accelerating the lead time, or decelerating the lead time, making it shorter, but improving the quality so there's not as many rework loops in the software development process.
So how is it that you've been able to kind of, you obviously learned under the best, when you're going through the lean process, and you've taken that. So what does your company do today when it comes to training people or teaching people or consulting or helping folks out with that lean process? What's the life?
A lot of people look at lean or any kind of transformation that they do. They look at it from a physical perspective. Where are you going to put your equipment? How are you going to arrange your equipment and your cells and your materials and your inventory and how are you going to improve quality and all that? But what's missing in most transformations, and this is where most people fail, they fail to transform the invisible. And what I mean by that is how leaders treat people, how people treat people, because you cannot transform a company without addressing the people. And most leaders pay lip service to that, okay? And there's a notion called respect for people that was conceptualized by Toyota, okay? And if you look at the respect for people principle and go back into history, Toyota learned from all the leaders, the Demings of the world, in the Schuharts and even in Taylor, Frederick Taylor, who started the modern, industrial revolution, engineering revolution. All those things go together to respect for people. And when Toyota talks about respect for people, they're not only talking about employees. They're talking about shareholders. They're talking about customers. They're talking about the environment, society. And believe it or not, Toyota talks about the competition. Okay, they think they should treat their competition with respect. I don't know any company in the world I ever met that thought that way. Okay, and so respect for people is a real key, and that's where leaders pay lip service to, but they don't necessarily walk the talk when it comes to that.
So, how would you define respect for people? Like, well, what is respect when it comes to your competition?
Well, I think you have to understand, and if you have a very high level thinking about the marketplace, and if you're true, good competition makes you better. Okay, if you're being, if you have lackluster competition, you may be the best, but you'll be mediocre. Okay, so in some regard, a lot of companies collaborate with each other to develop the newest technologies and things like that, even though they compete. So there's nothing wrong with that, and I think if you have a broader perspective, if everybody grows, then it's going to be better for everybody, right? If we can provide better products and services, provide more safety, whatever the case may be, to the marketplace, then it overall. But the problem is that CEOs are measured quarter by quarter. They are not incented to think that way. Okay, and so our own measurement systems and our own compensation systems get in the way of that broader range thinking, and that's where we don't evolve as much as we should evolve. And I think this virus situation is starting to, lower the water so we can start seeing the rocks of what's out there and the things that we have to do as a country and as a business, if you will, as an industry, to fix all those things. And so, sometimes profits hide the real problems. If we're successful, it doesn't mean you're a great company because you're successful financially. Okay. So, when I look at respect for people, it's how, it's little things sometimes. Showing up on time to a meeting, not picking up your cell phone in the middle of a conversation, not being late, paying attention, listening to somebody even though you disagree with them.
I think listening is one of the hard ones that a lot of people aren't able to do anymore, or they feel like they can't do. They're constantly being pulled and distracted in many different ways. And we have a little box in our conference room that says, rest your phone here, because put your phone down before you sit down at the table. That way you're not distracted.
And it's a cultural thing. It's a lot of people listen to respond. They don't listen to understand.
Exactly. So, and one of the things that when you're talking about that, there's two things that popped into mind. You mentioned the virus, and that's definitely the number one thing. Is I was listening to an interview with a researcher, and he was saying that one of the things that he's seen out of this is the amount of collaboration that's been going on with researchers trying to develop a vaccine and treatments, that all this information that they're sharing has never happened before. He said in his 30 years of doing this, it's always been the companies kind of hide their information until they have a patented, something that they can patent and put out there that they own. Whereas now they're just sharing the information freely. And it's one of those things like, wow, we're improving, at a much faster rate because of the shared information. And then the second thing I thought about was Elon Musk. And I know he's a little crazy sometimes, but one of the things that he has been known for is to kind of share the information of things that he's finding and share his patents and share things publicly and say, yes, you can use this technology too, because he knows that if other people start developing electric cars, then Tesla will be better overall because they're going to have competition, and the competition is going to improve the product.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's a good example of what Toyota means by respecting your competition, right? And so here's the thing, John. If our goal is to make profit, and that is our only goal, and we're not looking at the bigger picture of benefiting society and thinking that we can also make profit that way too. I mean, they're not mutually exclusive, right? So if we do both, now a good example would be the fact that so many businesses, and I've consulted CEOs on this all the time. Most don't listen, but not to go to China. Moving your supply chain 8,000 miles away from your customer base is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And expect that you can be more profitable by doing that just because the labor is cheaper. But they forget about total landed cost, all the costs associated with it, the long lead times. Home Depot, for example, will bill you if you're late. I know one business where 7 guys got fired against our advice because they incurred $8 million of late charges from Home Depot because they moved their stuff to China. Okay. So it's just counterintuitive for a lean thinker like me to say, moving your business away from your customer base 8,000 miles. Now you look at it, we have this whole notion in lean called safety, quality, delivery, and cost in that order.
Right?
SQDC, safety first. We never and it's in that order for a reason. So I will never ask an employee to hit one of those other cost objectives or quality objectives or delivery objectives and compromise the safety. Okay. Now we think about that, but we haven't really evolved. Now the bigger level thinking that you're talking about in terms of collaborating and all that stuff and sharing Elon Musk, okay, isn't there, because if you really look at this, moving to China is all about profits. Even though it's not profitable because CEOs don't see the real cost against our advice, it's not. No company can make money moving 8,000 miles away from their better, just because of a cheaper labor rate. That's ridiculous. Because labor a lot of times is a small percent of your cost. But anyway, what we've done as a company is not think broadly like you're talking about. And I don't know if you've seen this in the news lately, but 97% of our antibiotics are made in China. And they're our most adversarial country in the world. We're at, we can go to war with them any day. So if they shut down that industry or take those companies over, and other medical devices too, not just antibiotics, if we cut antibiotics, millions would die. First of all, organ transplants would come to a halt. Mm-hmm. You can't do organ transplants without antibiotics. The numbers that I saw was that 3 out of 10 people would die if they who caught pneumonia. And the other number I saw was 5 out of 5 mothers out of 1,000, every 1,000 childbirths would die because of the lack of antibiotics, and there's all other fallouts too. And we think the virus is a big deal from a head count, a death perspective. That would be catastrophe. And so CEOs moving and compromising our nation's safety in that regard for the sake of profits is what we're missing here. Okay. And I really do. I'm not a big guy for big government intervention. That is one. If you think about the role of government, and the role of government is to protect your people, that's one where I would favor regulation. Okay. We don't allow those kind of things to be made in foreign soil.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that for the military. We can't make weapons in a foreign country for the military. We have to make them here. Why aren't we doing that for things like the antibiotics and things like that? So
yeah, I agree 100%. I think,
and that to me is a respect for people issue, John. If you really get down to it,
when I first or when the virus first started hitting, they first shut down shipments from China for a short period of time. I have a cousin that's he's in Chesapeake, Virginia, and he had a liver transplant recently. And at that time, he couldn't find his prescriptions. He ended up having to go to 3 or 4 different stores before he found it. And it was kind of like, oh man, if I don't get this stuff, I could possibly die. And, luckily he got it, but you're right. Once that happened, he was telling me, yeah, it all comes from China. And I was like, what, why? Why is that the case? And, being a dummy in technology, I don't pay any attention to what's going on. And I first started to hear this, and it's shocking to me that we didn't think this through, and how many other things are like that as well.
A lot, all kinds of medical equipment, all kinds of things you can think of. But, antibiotics is the one that really is an easy one to talk about because it relates to so many people.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, John, every CEO you talk to out there says, yeah, I agree with SQDC, but really how they operate their business is CCCC. Okay. And so we got to shift that mindset and think broader about what we're trying to do here. And, and if we do the right thing in that regard, profits will follow. Because to me, profits are a result of just doing the right thing. Right. Yeah. And so, but everybody focuses on that like they can really control it. You have to control all the other variables to drive that. So.
Well, when I look at the SQDC and was thinking about it, and when you sent me an email and you had that in there, and I was going through, how does that relate to technology and engineering and writing code or putting together servers? Well, safety is really important because you look at some of the businesses that are out there that had, crucial security leaks or bugs. Look at Equifax, how much money they lost because of
right.
What was really a minor thing that they just didn't catch because they thought, well, it's just, it's a small security hole. Nobody's going to find it. And sure enough, they did. Right. And, plugging that safety should always be number one. And then you get into quality. If you can fix the quality, then you don't have your rework, and rework's expensive, as we all know. And if you don't have rework, then your delivery gets a little bit better, right? And that cuts your costs. So it all kind of
you're a lean thinker.
Waterfall.
You're a lean thinker.
Well,
I wish most of my clients would understand what you just said. Okay, really understand it. That's excellent. Yeah.
And from a new manager or leader, if you can think like this and kind of go down this path, you're going to have a very successful team, and you'll do an excellent job as a leader if you can follow these processes and also get into that respect for people and realizing that one of your number one things is to respect your team, and you're not going to get the respect from your team unless you respect them first.
No question about it. And by the way, what we call the cost of poor quality, I've done the math before, really did the math, and a cost of poor quality could range anywhere from 15 to 25% of revenues. Okay, because of bad quality, and it's all hidden. Most of it's hidden. Easy to count as warranty and quality defects and stuff like that. But if you really look at the cost associated with it, so if you're a $10 million company, let's just say, it's a low number, but let's just say $2.5 million is going to go against your profits on bad quality. Okay, now when you talk about technology. Here's how I see a lot of technology play. I'm working with a company right now called Jaze, Jaze. He's a partner of mine who is not only does networking and things like that, but I'm recommending it to my clients. He's into IoT. Okay, and where technology can really help in terms of all those things you talked about, including safety, is how we use IoT, and that's evolving every day. It's changing. There's new devices, new applications, and all that. But you take about a very simple thing like let's just take an Amazon warehouse, a big 2 million square foot warehouse. And you got, people talk about, being assaulted and crime and things like that on the streets. It happens at work too. So if you're in the back of the warehouse, somebody can get assaulted. So why not give that person an IoT device where they can summon help really quick, right? Even if you don't have that problem, your employees will look at that and say, wow, they thought about my safety. In the event it happens, it may never happen, but the goodwill you get from what we call, your public persona, your corporate social responsibility, CSR, is enhanced. And when that happens, and here are the intangibles. When you treat employees, that way, you're going to attract better talent. You're going to have higher customer loyalty. You're going to have better retention, and overall, just a better environment for your employees, right? And so I see technology like that, John. With IoT. And by the way, IoT now can sense when an employee is getting fatigued, and they can pull them off the line because they don't want them to get hurt. Well, normally when people get hurt, they get hurt because of fatigue and they're just not paying attention, right? So, and some of this equipment is pretty dangerous. I don't know if you know the stat, but on an annual basis on this globe, we lose 2.7 million people a year to workplace accidents. 2.7 million. And I know we're worried about this virus, but come on, nobody's addressing that. And so I don't say nobody's addressing it, but it's not on the forefront of what's going on.
You're not hearing about it in the news.
You're not hearing about it, right? And so I think technology can play a big role in helping in that regard. I really do.
No, I think that's a really valid point. And I like the idea of having something, it could be part of your badge. We all have badges. We have to swipe in and out to get into rooms, but you can have a button right there on your badge. It's just a distress call, right? Yeah. And it calls your security team and says, hey, something's going on. And you can use it for many different things. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be assault. It could also be I've fallen and I've hurt myself, or,
exactly.
I see somebody that's suspicious in the building,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. What are some tips that you have for new leaders that are out there that want to, make an impact? They want to, build a good team, but also, have a team that's, profitable for their company. Everybody wants a team that's successful. So what are some advice that you have maybe for a new manager, a new leader out there that's going through this process?
Well, I know your audience is big into technology, right? A lot of the people that listen to you are tech people. And so here's my experience. What happens is the real good technical people, get promoted, and they become the manager or the vice president or the CIO or whatever, right? And they get promoted primarily because they're really good, technical people, okay? But what happens as you elevate in the organization, you do less technical and more people management, okay? And not to say that you still need to understand the technical things to have the conversation, but it almost, in a lot of cases, my experience is that the people side of it was kind of like a byproduct. It was kind of like an offside thing. That should be the primary focus of somebody elevating in an organization to a leadership position, is the people, okay, not the technology. And I'm not saying not pay attention to the technology, don't get me wrong, but we kind of pay lip service to the people side of it. And a lot of times you find people in technical roles, even in things like finance and engineering, where the CFO, the head IT guy, the head engineering leader, he or she might just not pay attention as much to the people side. And the successful people are the ones can do a couple things. One, really embrace the power of their team. And two, and also, obviously respect for people and all that stuff. But two, understand how they fit into the strategy of the business, and not just think that everybody has to serve the IT infrastructure. It's got to be the opposite way around. IT has to think about, or technology has to think about, everybody in the organization being their customer. And then how do you collaborate and work together, as opposed to putting, for example, an ERP system and then saying, okay, everybody has to march along what our system says you have to do. That's inverted. It's got to be inverted. It's got to be like, here's our business needs. Here's what we need to do. How does technology support that? Yeah, so the whole idea, the whole notion of a leader thinking that everybody has to kind of walk in IT to their their algorithms, if you will, is wrong. But like I said, most leaders who get elevated aren't trained to be a leader. Some naturally do it, some don't. But it's not all about the technical at that point. You got to think about the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I went through that same path when I first became a manager. It was just like, oh, you're a really good coder, so now you're going to manage coders, and I knew nothing about it. And after a lot of struggling, I had a good mentor that kind of taught me some of the things, and he was in sales, so he knew people, and that helped me out probably more than any other thing. And to your point, I just interviewed the CTO from Microsoft US, and she actually has a psychology background. And she talked about how you have to be good enough with technology to be competent in it, but you need to shift your focus away from the technology into the people. And I think you're hitting exactly what people need to hear.
She's absolutely right. She's absolutely right.
So I like what you said about inverting it, so that, because a lot of times in technology, we have all these strict policies and rules, and says the business has to use this software and they have to do it this way. But I like what you talked about, is flipping that and kind of being, of service to the company, and realizing that, as much as I hate to think about it, a lot of times in technology, you're a cost center, right? You are draining money away from the company. You've got to figure out a way to add value back to the company. And a lot of that is to listen to the way that they need technology and support them and serve the company in a way to reduce costs and to increase performance and efficiency.
Oh yeah, no. Well, that's why I think you have to think about it this way, John. You don't want to have the best technology function in a company. You want to have the best company. Okay. So I could be a really good technical function, but sub-optimize the rest of the organization. Okay. And that can't be. I want to do both. I want to be the best technology group, and I also want to work within the context of the best enterprise. So if I only singularly look at the technology function and optimize that, I can guarantee you will sub-optimize the rest of the business. So you have to work in concert with the whole strategy of the business, not just, you don't want to become the best HR function or the best finance function or the best sales function. You've got to look at, IT the same way. You've got to look at the whole business and the strategy and how you fit in to make the enterprise the best. Okay. While you're making yourself the best, but in concert with the overall strategy of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's shift gears just a little bit. You have a new book out called Flatline. Tell us a little bit about that book and what it's about and why you decided to write that.
Well, a couple of reasons. One is it's called Flatline, and the subtitle, John, is Why Lean Transformations Fail and What to Do About It. There are a lot of books out there today and a lot of authors who write about why they fail, but not many have the solutions as to what to do about it. Okay, and that's what I've done here. Luckily for my career, I have seen hundreds of transformations over the course of time. And then after a while, after 30 years of doing this, you kind of step back and say, you know what? That's the same circus, just different clowns, really, at the end of the day, right? And it's the same parallels. And everybody makes the same mistakes. Okay. And I've seen it time and time again. So when a client asks me, why should we hire you? I tell them, I said, I've made more mistakes than you have. That's why you should hire me. Okay. I can sit here and talk about my successes, but it was any road to success is wrought with a lot of setbacks and mistakes. And it's how you respond to those mistakes that make you successful. Right. So I want to talk about the mistakes. Okay. I actually have a pitch called 10 humble errors, where I talk about the errors I've made in architecting the Danaher business system. Okay. Because I can guarantee you say lean is intuitive, you will make the same mistakes. Okay. And people do. So this book is about the transformational mistakes that have been made and then what you need to do about it. Right. Now, why is it called Flatlined? Because when a CEO calls me up and says, Mark, we've been doing it for 10 years. It's not working. We flatlined. That's the word they always use. That's why I call the book Flatlined. And they do. And there are certain reasons why. And I've outlined those in the book. and I provided the solutions to think about in terms of truly transforming your business. So.
Awesome. And how can people find that book, and where can they go? And
it's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon. It's going to be a Kindle version of it too. I think that might already be done. I'm not sure, but it's on Amazon. You can go right to Amazon and type in Flatline or type in my last name, and you'll find it. So,
all right, we'll link that up in the show notes too. And also, I want to give you a few minutes to talk a little bit about your nonprofit that you've set up, Brave. Talk about kind of how that happened, and how can people maybe learn more about that if that's of service to them.
Yeah, it's not even a nonprofit. It's not a 501c3. It's an organization I put together. I want no money at all coming through this. This is all about people's time.
Okay.
So I've assembled a team of people. First of all, it's I'm a Gold Star father. I lost my son in Afghanistan 10 years ago. Come August will be 10 years. And my other son, Scott, who is owns a business for plugins. He writes plugins for websites. Fought over there at the same time with Stephen, and at the time when my son was killed, they were like 80 miles apart. So, which is a long way in Afghanistan because of the mountains. 80 miles to you and me might seem like an hour trip, right? At least the way I drive. And so they drive fast out here in Arizona. Anyway, so when my son came back, and I got to meet a lot of my son Steven's brothers, who came back after the war, and I started working with them, and I found out that so many have trouble assimilating back into either corporate America or into society, period, right? Because it's almost like, they're being shot at every day, okay? Bombs threatening, their FOBs, forward operating bases over there that they set up, are being bombed frequently, right? So then they come back here and they see people's biggest problems. They got hauled up in traffic for 10 minutes, or they got the wrong latte at Starbucks or whatever, right? And that's their big problem for the day, right? And they can't reconcile that. Then they go into corporate America. Now, if you know anything about the military is very regimented, very clear, lines of authority, very clear. You know what you're responsible for, you're accountable, and all that stuff. And they get back here and they work into these businesses, and all the CEOs think they have such a regimented organization. At the end of the day, it's a bunch of gray. It's a bunch of gray. And a lot of veterans cannot reconcile that gray with the black and white that they've been trained to, right? So some of them want to start businesses. And so I said to myself, how can I didn't serve. I missed Vietnam by a year. And quite frankly, I didn't have the guts to do what my sons did, because they left CPA firms to go fight. Okay. They didn't say, I'm going to go in and do accounting. They said, I want to go to the front lines. Okay. And so I said to myself, what can I do? Well, geez, God's given me this gift of business experience, and I can help these veterans start businesses. I can also help them with their careers. So Brave, business reviews and advisors for veteran entrepreneurs. And the website is the number 4, forthebrave.org. That's what I do. I help veterans start businesses. I help them with their careers. I've assembled a team of people that are helping me. They're on my website. And that's what Brave, and it's free. No fees at all. If I have to pay to get on a plane to go to present to a bank to help a veteran get a loan, that's on me. And that's it. So it's not a 501c3 because I don't want any money flowing through it at all. I just want time and value. That's what I want for our veterans. So that's the way I think I need to pay them back. So,
well, that's awesome. And thank you for doing that. I'm definitely going to link that up in the show notes, and any veterans out there that, could benefit from this, definitely check that out at forthebrave.org. And that's going to be linked up. Definitely.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And also, thank you for coming on the show. I think you've offered a lot of great advice, especially for new leaders that are out there. And we're definitely going to link up your book, Flatline. It'll be in the show notes as well as on our page for books from our guest. So, Mark, thanks again for coming on the show. And any last words of advice or anything you want to share?
No, just be open to new possibilities. That's all. I mean, I think this virus, quite frankly, John, is starting to challenge the norm. especially things like this, like video conferencing and all that. Right before the conference, before the virus thing hit, I flew to Boston from Arizona for a 2-hour meeting. Crazy, and matter of fact, when I got to the meeting, 2 of the guys were on Skype or they're on Zoom. It was like, why couldn't I have done that? And so we're going to start challenging how we do work. Schools are going to be challenged now, the traditional way of delivering classroom. Okay.
Sports.
This is lean thinking, by the way. This is lean thinking. And this is where technology is going to play really big. And I think technology is going to be a real key to the future. The other thing is, I'm 63 years old. Technology transformed remarkably in my lifetime. I think in the next generation, it's going to go at 1,000 times faster. And, you think about things like blockchain, right? IoT, blockchain. Jeff Bezos is sitting there right now on Amazon saying, hey, Amazon could be obsolete in 5 years because of blockchain. I could maybe order that pen from China directly from the factory. I don't need Amazon anymore. So technology is going to have a big play, and it's going to go faster and faster and faster, and really disrupt everything that we do. So, and I think this virus was one thing that kind of shined a light just on that, right? So just be aware of change. That's all I'm saying. Don't get locked into what you're doing today because it's going to change tomorrow.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And that's one of the things I tell my students is the things that I'm teaching you, it's going to be obsolete by the time you graduate. So just learn how to learn. Don't worry about what you learn.
Oh, yeah, especially in technology. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, Mark, man, it's been a great conversation. Thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for all that you've been doing. Really appreciate it.
John, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Mark, and please check out his book. Also, don't forget about our sponsors, SplashTop. You can find out more at geekleader.com/SplashTop.